So we'll start with otbsports.com. This is the homepage of our website this morning. And the two faces of Neymar. Is it the Brazilian's time to sparkle? The shaved head and the beard. That's far better than the highlights, apparently. All this stuff actually matters. Daniel Cormier's legacy, grit and determination personified, is our UFC story this morning. Quique Setién sacked as manager of Barca. The axe have been hanging over him a long time. And David Silva returns to La Liga with Real Sociedad. There is a blast from the past. I'll bring you to the sports pages this morning. A bunch of different stories happening. So Lukaku scoring. The flat track bully that is Lukaku scoring the 4th and 5th goals in a 5-0 win. That never happens. Frenchman stands in the way of PSG glory. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. United's recent history suggests it will not be easy for Solskjaer to kick on. So Jamie Jackson sounding a note of caution. And then loads of rugby coverage ahead of the restart of the domestic rugby. McFadden faces a fitness race against time. Really awful news for Ferguson McFadden. He's popped a calf. He's out for 6 weeks. So that's probably him done in a Leinster jersey, unless he makes it back a little bit ahead of time. And the granny rule and Leinster school kids are the way forward. Gavin Comiskey's piece this morning suggesting that the days of players coming over and qualifying for Ireland through residency are done and dusted. Pink balls and early starts for tests. This controversy about the cricket not getting finished on time. Interesting piece from John Fogarty this morning. The best bit of public relations the GPA has ever done. It may well be. There's now a row emerging, Owen, to see who was actually responsible for the notion of splitting the season, because it looks like it's a done deal. Before there's even been a conversation about it, it's now so popular that there is a row about who came up with the idea. John Horn's like, well, we were talking about this all the time. And John Fogarty's like, well, maybe the GPA knew that this was coming and they got out ahead of it, and now they look very proactive. I mean, does it really matter who had the best idea? I'm not sure. The Mirror Anfield wrap. We've just had Gareth Roberts on from the Anfield wrap, but they're already talking about the end of days for Jurgen Klopp, which is like many years in the distance. The Liverpool job could be his last job. I'm going to take a year off in 2024, and if I don't miss it, that'll be the end of me as a coach. All these like deadlines for stuff. What if it turns out that he wants to go on and become the longest serving, longest tenured Liverpool manager? You know, maybe he becomes the new Alex Ferguson and keeps going until he's 70. Who knows? Root backs early start. That's the cricket story. And hard to join Tottenham, which was the story that they had yesterday in the same place. I'm almost certain that story, exact same story, was in the exact same spot on the back of it. And City to unveil statue of Silva. We'll come back to that. Split decision. CPA urged GAA to make call on dividing season. So CPA adding their voice to the chorus that everybody else is now on track for. Pardon me. Munster back in action after COVID-19 scare, so all negative tests returned from Munster's perspective, which means that they're all back in training and totally good to go. Root exasperated by shortest test in England for 33 years, even though they're in the midst of a heat wave. They weren't able to get the test against Pakistan finished. Barcelona turned to Koeman in hour of need, which is I don't know, I'd like to see, is Ronald Koeman going to be able to manage the Netherlands as well in the Euros next year, or is that him done now? He's given up the chance to manage in the Euros to be the Barcelona manager for essentially 6 months. Fahy, the leader of Pool Pack. Niamh Fahy is the new captain of Ireland, or new captain of Liverpool, sorry, and it says it's beyond her wildest dreams. The sponsors are sticking with the FAI for the rest of the year. 3, Jurgen Klopp, that's the same story there, that he's on his way out. Defiant, under fire, United keeper. I'll keep her hold of my job. So that's David De Gea staying. Luke away now. Ole, I don't know if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is looking at Romelu Lukaku thinking I want a bit of that in my team, because I don't think he does. Klopp plans to take a year off. That's the same story. And then that brilliant story that we were talking about earlier on. Unlocking the chimp could lead Mayo to promised land, says Rocket Mine Guru. Michael Verney's done some good work here. Talked to Steve Peters, who reckons he could fix Mayo. You know, everything's fixable. We know that. Dub's show must go on. County Board continue play despite COVID cases. So club matches are continuing. Dublin County Board have issued reissued guidelines, or restated their guidelines. And Canaan, favourite Gillette, rock solid in stellar Juddmonte. So that's Mick Canaan talking to the Racing Post today. And Paris Saint-Germain are their favourites against RB Leipzig tonight. Where are we starting on?
David Silva, set to be etched out in granite, limestone, marble.
Copper.
Sure what.
It'll be copper.
Copper.
Aren't all statues these days copper?
Well, what's the major rock that is the bedrock of the UAE? What is there? Could there be
oil?
shipping in a cap there?
Plastic? Would it just be a plastic kind of rubber, vulcanized rubber?
Vulcanized rubber. So there's a vulcanized rubber statue of David Silva going up outside the Etihad soon. Too soon? Question mark. Too soon? Basically, is the point I'm making to you. Like, you think that this is far ahead of time. That you basically are. I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but you basically think people should be dead before they get a statue.
I mean, a little bit, yeah. Like, a couple of things, right? Have we not just watched the greatest dismantling of statues in human history recently, where we're questioning the whole point of putting up statues and having anybody be elevated above their peers? So on that level, like in the grand scheme of the sweep of history, are we sure that a statue of David Silva right now, while he's not finished playing, is merited? Does this mean Sergio Aguero also has to get one? Like, yes, because Aguero's achievements, it's possible to argue, are greater and more meaningful than Silva's. I think. So everybody gets one. So Mancini gets one, Pellegrini gets one. Like who doesn't get one? Pep gets one.
Like definitely, if you're picking between them, Aguero is the guy who gets the statue. He definitely is ahead of David Silva. Like I'd be interested. You know the way there's all these like EDL people camping out to protect statues around the UK at the moment. Is like Graham Souness going to be camped out in front of the David Silva statue, ensuring that nobody actually pulls it down, considering he's like the greatest fan of David Silva that's ever existed. Maybe maybe we need to wait a little bit longer to actually see who is the greatest from this era, or wait for the era to finish. Now, I do think that like your way is one way of looking at it, but I wonder, do we actually just respect the dead way too much, and actually we should be respecting them a little bit more while they're alive? And actually, the fact that you have to wait for somebody to pass on before giving them a statue, I'm not sure if I necessarily subscribe to that theory. I think it's kind of nice to have a statue of somebody while they're still alive. We don't necessarily need to wait for their obituary to actually realise that somebody has had greatness. And if they genuinely feel that Silva is a level above everybody else in that Manchester City era, because it is the first truly sensational era in Manchester City's history, where they are one of the best teams in the continent and in the world, then they should erect that statue. But I just disagree that he is the best.
Get a big screen outside the stadium and put on a loop highlights of his best passes and goals and free kicks and whatever it was, and that's actually paying better testimony to him than giving him a statue. I just think look, the other aspect of it is Manchester City need to create some sense of belonging and history around the stadium. When you go to Manchester United and you go to Old Trafford, they have a museum and they have trophies and they have history, and they have the clock stuck at the time from the Munich air disaster, and it's like you feel that this is something that's absolutely rooted in the past and is a long continuum. At Manchester City, you don't have that same feeling. So I get why they're trying to do this. It's like we've got to create our own history. And in 20 years' time, kids will come and go, who's that guy? Who's like, oh, he was our best player when we became a super club. He was one of those players, one of the many, many signings that we made who turned out to be better than Robinho, who thought that he was signing for United. And he knew which club he knew which side his bread was buttered on, and that made him a hero in our eyes. Like, it seems a little plastic to me.
On the subject of statues that have been erected quite soon after a player's career, like Thierry Henry has a statue at Arsenal. And when that happened, I was like, fair enough. Greatest ever Premier League player.
The Premier League it's a false duality.
Possibly the greatest ever player. Full stop.
Maybe, is it not a bit soon? Like, are you know, and actually, you know what?
Did you realise though?
Did that going up? Did that inspire the next generation to go on and win European Cups, or was that like all right, 10 hats on that now? When did that happen? How much did they win after that?
But it's only gone up in was 2000 I don't know when it went up. It's definitely within the last 10 years. And maybe it'll take a child to actually go up and actually be inspired by the Thierry Henry statue and for him to have a great career. But that's not, do people genuinely believe that that's what statues are for? That it is there to have some sort of material impact on the results of a team? Of course not. It is to commemorate great players, or to actually signify that this great player once played for this club and we love this player at this football club. That's kind of what it is. They're reading into it more than just an item to remember somebody. I think is a little bit pointless because it'll never inspire another generation. It'll never actually have a material impact on anything.
It's just a decoration.
Yeah, I think so. Like I've got no issue with that Henri statue going up whatsoever. I don't think it's too soon at all. Like he
2011.
Was it 2011? Right. Okay. That was before his second stint at the club, was it?
I mean, come on, like that's a bit lame.
That is quite.
So he goes back into the dressing room after that, and actually he did all right. Like, can people tell him what to do? Can the young players like criticize him if he's actually phoning it in training? They can't. You can't be putting that's like. Essentially, Barcelona have put up a metaphorical statue to Messi over the last couple of years, and he's still pulling his weight for most of the season. But the rest of them are like, sure, look, what's the point, you know? I don't know.
Nobody can push the statue around. I don't know. Like maybe they didn't realise that he was going to come back to the club at that point. I think there was a clear realisation late in his career that this guy was one of the best players to ever play for the club, and he was always going to get a statue. I just don't think what's the point in like hanging around waiting for somebody to get old and grey and waiting for them to come back. To actually unveil their own statue in a little while. Do it when you know that they're young and that they can have their.
Give everybody a statue, I say. A statue for everyone.
Like, why not?
Give Robinho his statue. Sure, wasn't he the signing that heralded everything going that one way? And sure, all the troubles that he had in his life afterwards. What of them? Sure, they can pull the statue down in a couple of years' time when we all find out about them. What's next?
Like a Khaldoon al-Mubarak statue could be next up as well for Manchester City. Next up, what will we talk about next? So we're going to get into Ronald Koeman later on. Oh, let's talk about Munster Leinster. Sorry. So this is like covered quite a bit in the newspapers today. Isan Esewa and Johnny Sexton and Ronald O'Gara, rather, were out doing press yesterday. So they're covered in a lot of the newspapers this morning. A couple of interesting things in the Esewa comments, talking about RG Snyman. He makes a slight comparison, a sort of oblique comparison between himself and Brad Thorne. And he says he's a specimen, there's no doubt about it. When you have someone who has the speed to go along with that and probably a different skill set than the rest, and that's what lifts and will continue to lift the Munster forwards to a new level. Certain individuals have that physique, the change that they can make to the attitude around them. It's no different to Brad Thorne and the influence he had throughout all the different clubs around the world. So all I'm hearing here is that after Leinster managed to pluck the best talents from around the world to win their Heineken Cup with Brad Thorne in tow, Munster are merely following the model of looking outside their own province to bring in great international stars like RG Snyman and Damien de Allende. And I'm sure that is striking fear into the heart of every Leinster supporter around Ireland, Ger.
Brad Thorne basically had like a Zlatan-style career where everywhere he went, league titles and European Cups followed and World Cups in different codes. So that's very high praise from somebody who obviously witnessed firsthand the material impact somebody like Brad Thorne can have. And I think, you know, this is Ozymandias. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair. I am king of kings. The rest of the world are genuinely worried about what's going to emerge from Munster as the chrysalis unfurls. What colour? It's obviously a giant red butterfly, but is it a red moth coming bringing death? Does the moth signify death for the rest of Europe, Owen? Yes, it does. Mm-hmm. Because right now, expectations among Munster fans should not be any higher than being the best team in Europe. Look at the quality of the coaching ticket that they put together. Look at the massive investment that they've made in 2 World Cup winners. Look at the finally largely fit squad they have, with the exception, obviously, of I think Ty Burn is out for the rest of the season. And yeah, obviously, we still wait to see Joey Carberry back, and you know, fingers crossed he's going to be back sooner rather than later. But like, you must be unbelievably excited to be a Munster Rugby fan at the moment. Like, what a team they've put together.
It's Galactico-esque in terms of what they've done in this imposed off-season. It's definitely going to be novel to see players of that quality going out and representing Munster over the next little while. That'll wear off after a little while, and you'll see kind of what level they actually settle at. And it'll probably be next season before you start to kind of appreciate what they can actually do for the club. And I guess what Van Gran and their connection is as well, because that's possibly why this has happened as well, why there has been a bit of a South African influence on Munster as well, that the coaching ticket has been based from that country now for the last 2 tickets that the coaching team has had. So I don't know, like, I'm not convinced that this is automatically going to be uber success, considering the gap between Munster and Leinster was fairly large. But I think Alan Quinlan has always made the point that the gap between Leinster and Munster has always been large because 1 to 23, Leinster are just so much better than Munster rather than 1 to 15. 1 to 15, you could nitpick a few positions here and there where Munster might make the edge. You see the Munster players who get caps for Ireland and who start for Ireland. But it's really, when you look through the bench, that's when Leinster really have the jump on Munster, and they've been able to close out games so well, kill teams down the stretch. And I think that Leinster were possibly 20 points better than Munster before lockdown. I think they're now 8 points better than Munster, but on any given day, that's just over a one-score game. And I think if Joey Carberry comes back and is still on the trajectory that we saw before his terrible run of injuries, I think that closes down to an even smaller gap, especially if Sexton goes the other way. But that brings us nicely on to Johnny Sexton, because Izan Asewa has been talking about this imposed sabbatical that a lot of players have had to do this year. Nasewa, of course, took some time out of the game, came back a new man after his own sabbatical, and he says you'd be able to get over niggles that you had. That's one of the points he made with the lockdown. There would still be enough time to get gains physically and mentally, even with all the distractions that were going on. It was the perfect time to refresh. I can see Johnny Sexton playing until he is 42 if he wanted. There might be a slight exaggeration in that quote, but maybe there's not. Maybe there is like a situation here where we see Johnny Sexton going for a long, long time here and is still playing at a fairly decent level, a very decent level, and he is still the best out half in Ireland. In that world, that is a terrifying prospect for the Munster fan, because that, I think, does keep Munster at arm's length for a little while longer. Like he says,
7 more years of Johnny Sexton, according to Eason. That's a lot.
Yeah, not bad. Nasewa says he's spoken to players all over the world during the time, and he says if I can get another year out of this, that's the way players who've been speaking to him, that's the things that they've been saying. He says someone like John Afoa, who's been putting his head in a scrum for 17 years, is feeling great and knows he can go for another year with ease. They just have to be conscious about hitting the ground running and managing that as soon as rugby kicks off again. So it's a good time to be in your twilight years in your rugby career, according to Izan Asewa.
Yeah, look, the restart of the rugby season, you're going to have some fairly serious injuries over the next couple of weeks because they haven't had full contact the way they're going to have in match situation. You started to see the pads started to go on in the NFL, and already there's a bunch of ACLs have been blown out in the first couple of training sessions. So this is, I think, what we saw with the Bundesliga and what we saw with the NRL when they came back. Now, it didn't seem to happen that much in English football, or as much as maybe they were a little bit later on. They got to witness some of the stuff, so you'd hope that there aren't too many serious injuries. But I hope he's right. Another 4 or 5 years, Johnny Sexton keeping the seat warm for whoever's coming next and driving standards wouldn't be the worst thing, would it?
No, it absolutely wouldn't. And I guess it's still a question that needs to be answered from Leinster's perspective as well. When does Ross Byrne start making the step up where there is a proper challenge for that 10 jersey? I'm sure as a Leinster fan, you'll admit that there really has never been a proper battle since Carberry has left. Byrne has been excellent, and he has been composed, and he has definitely shown a cool head, probably beyond his years a little bit. But I don't think we've ever seriously got into a conversation where it's like Sexton's Leinster jersey and his position in that team is seriously under threat. That probably needs to start happening soon for Leinster. Even if Sexton does go to 42, there will likely be a drop off at some point.
It has to happen for Ireland first. It'll happen first for Ireland, and there's no sign of that happening. Legitimately no sign of that happening. So,
well, were we not having a Carberry Sexton debate? Was that not a serious thing, or are we saying that was all just kind of pointless arguments around the merits of Joey Carberry? Because I certainly felt that was a real debate
about who would actually start a big game.
It definitely felt that there was a conversation about how do we get Joey Carberry into the team.
Well, that's different. That's a completely different conversation.
I accept that, but
but that's he's not challenging him. That's the opposite of challenging him. That's let's put him at full back, or can he play centre, or that's literally Sexton is unassailable in this argument, and so therefore how do you get him in the team?
That's the conversation you're having before the Rugby World Cup. I think that conversation shifts a little bit now. That's the conversation where Sexton is the reigning world player of the year, and that's to do with the fact that nobody is going to take his jersey. But what's happened now is there's been an intervening 6 months where the form for Ireland as a whole, like all our top players really haven't exactly gone back to anywhere close to 2018 levels yet. And there have been conversations about who is usurping who. Now, of course, Carbery's been out, so we haven't been able to have that conversation around out half. But we've been having that conversation around pretty much every other position. Like my opinion would be that once Carbery comes back, and if he is back to the I guess the beast that he was before his slew of injuries, that conversation will then become a reality head to head. But the thing is that like
when,
yeah, like we don't know when that'll be. But like I mean, it's not necessarily kind of a black mark against Carbery that the conversation was had that how do you get them both into the team? Like that could have been a black mark against Rob Kearney as much as anything else.
Yeah, it was. It was. That's the whole point. My point is that Johnny Sexton's position in the Ireland team is unassailed and has been. And until somebody can kick him out of the Ireland team, there's no chance of him getting kicked out of the Leinster team. That's unassailable at this stage. And maybe Joey Carbery is the person to kick him out of the Ireland team, but he'll have to perform really well and he'll have to put a body of work together where there's a month or 2 months or 3 months where he's showing up. The best ability is availability, and we just don't have that at the moment. So 15 minutes past 9 here this morning on OTB AM. I've got to tell you what's on the OTB Sports app. Always very busy. It's your choice what the featured stories are on the feed. You get to select which sports you're interested in, and that's your home feed. You can scroll down and then you see the latest podcasts that are available for you there. You can also just have a one-click radio button. The bottom of the button at the bottom that says radio is OTB Sports Radio, and it's there 24 hours a day, uninterrupted stream of all of our content, including this show live, the evening show live, and all of our best stuff in between as well. Our podcast network is absolutely huge, 40 different podcasts updated at different intervals over the course of the month. All our videos are there. You can watch this show live, or you can look back at any of the stuff that we've done as well. And the best place to subscribe to our podcast is on the OTB Sports app. Loads of you are using it as your podcast player of choice at the moment, and we're getting really good feedback on that as well. So please download the app, rate it, share it, tell your mates, search OTB Sports on the App Store and you can have it right there. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day.